So in the order, if you look at the life of a typical monk of our order, you will find it's divided into meditation and study and service and devotional acts. So early in the morning, we would get up in our training process in the main monastery in India. We'd get up at just like that, 3:40 in the morning. A bell would ring, and believe me, you heard it. They would make sure that you heard it. I remember, I don't know, a senior Swami sitting here. I don't know whether I should share these. I remember there was one time one of the novices got so exasperated with the 3:40 a.m. bell that he actually hit the bell. But the person whose duty it was to ring the bell was very resourceful. So he took out a big steel plate and a steel cup and banged it all over the monastery, which was worse actually. I remember in our training period, 2 years of intensive study at the main monastery, we counted. We had 26 bells in 24 hours. And the most disliked one was the one at 10:30 p.m., which told you to go to sleep. Now, if you're already asleep, that was a very irritating bell. So in our order, to become a monk, one spends 10 years or 9 to 10 years as a novice. You'd be dressed in white, and you have the sacred tuft hair and the sacred thread, and you're called a Brahmachari. And 2 years is spent in intensive training. We study Vedanta intensively, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra, the Bhagavad Gita, with the commentaries of Shankaracharya and some other commentaries too. Plus, we study other philosophical texts, the introductions to the orthodox systems of philosophy, Sankhya and Yoga and all of that, and world philosophy, other religions, at least an acquaintance with other religions. So all of that is done intensively in 2 years. But there is a whole process of study and service and meditation and prayer which goes on in all of the centers of our order. So what Vivekananda did, he introduced certain innovations. Service was a very big factor which he introduced. There was a lot of resistance from traditional non-dualistic monks at that time. So this is for householders, this is for people in the world. Why should monks run schools and colleges and hospitals and relief activities in famine or flood? But over the years, it transformed Hinduism in certain ways. For example, even right now, there are most ashrams, monasteries where there are monks. People go there, and one of the things they ask is, what kind of service activity are you doing? It's taken for granted. It's a revolutionary change, really. I can share with you that one of the Shankaracharyas, the 4 Shankaracharyas in different parts of India who are part of the lineage started by the original Shankaracharya 1200 years ago, he visited our main monastery, and we were novices at that time. We remember sitting around him, and one of the questions he asked was about the service activities and how they can start. Now, this is amazing. This 1200-year-old, the Shankaracharya tradition, and they are asking how we can start service activities for the welfare of people. So this is one of the ways in which he changed it. What really do I find attractive in this particular tradition? I was thinking about it. One is this beautiful balance of discipline and freedom. For example, and it's important to me, there are no banned books. So I can read books of every tradition, whatever. I remember one of the first things that I asked one monk when I joined the order. I went to the library and he found this nice collection of P.G. Wodehouse. I don't know how many of you have come across very humorous books. I asked, can I read P.G. Wodehouse as a monk? I was a new monk. And the monk said something very interesting. He said, of course, you can read anything you want. But if I find you reading P.G. Wodehouse all the time, then there's something wrong with you. So there's this beautiful balance of freedom. And recently I read Ken Wilber, who was talking about why a lot of people, young people, especially in this country, they are drifting away from organized religion. So he makes 3 points. One is, he says, the clash with modern values. Sometimes organized religions, they tell us to believe something which we no longer believe in this age. It goes against gender equality or certain things. The second thing he said was that the violence between religions, this really is very off-putting, that violence, criticism, hatred between organized religions. And the third thing he said was the conflict which people see between reason and religion and science, for example, where something is taken as mainstream science and accepted by everything, and religion tells you, no, this is not the way it is. What was we thought 5,000 years ago, that you have to believe in. Now, what I liked about this tradition particularly was this freedom and this openness to new knowledge. Swami Vivekananda was all for reason. He says, a man must not only have faith, but have intellectual faith too. Harmony between religions. This is another important thing which I found, that absolutely no criticism of other religions. Sri Ramakrishna said, as many faiths, so many paths to God. So very strongly, it's part of our tradition that all religions are valid and all religions are true and deserve respect, and we can not like an ivory tower separation from religions, but actually learn from other religions and enrich our own spiritual path. I know this kind of perennialism is not in academic fashion these days, but I'm sort of old-fashioned. I prefer that kind of thinking. And openness to the values of the modern world. So this gender equality, we have a separate order for women. Swami Vivekananda thought about it more than 100 years ago. At that time, the burning issue back in India was widow remarriage. Should widows be allowed to remarry? So there was an orthodox section who said, no, this is against religion. There was a reform section who said, yes, they should be allowed to remarry. And Swami Vivekananda's answer was very typical. They asked him, which side do you fall on this issue? He said, why are you asking me? Am I a widow? They were surprised. No, but you must have an opinion on this side or that side. And his answer was amazing. He said, give freedom and education to women and let them decide what they will do, whether they will marry or not marry. This seems rather bland, but many years ago, I heard a historian in one of our institutions giving a talk. This lady, she talked about that issue 100 years ago, widow remarriage, and she said, it's amazing that a question which is so obvious to women, no man ever thought about it. There was one woman writer at that time who wrote, saying that I hear certain men telling me I'm free to remarry, and I can hear certain other men telling me I'm not free to remarry, but nobody ever asks me what I want. And if I'm asked, I would say, I want the same freedom that men have. I want education and freedom. So you see how Vivekananda, he just felt the pulse of what was really needed. So all of these ideas, I found it very appealing, actually. Here is a beautiful picture of the monks of our order taken a few years ago in front of the main temple. This is the temple of Sri Ramakrishna in India. So after 10 years, you take the orders and you become a monk, and your daily life is this harmony of meditation and service. In India, of course, we have a lot of service activities, schools, colleges, hospitals, even a university. Here, our service activity is basically teaching. Teaching, very interesting. The whole idea, there's no idea of conversion, that you have to be converted into from Christianity or Judaism into Hinduism. Absolutely nothing. I'm in that center, the first Vedanta society, 125 years. It's been running there. And if today somebody comes and asks me, I want to be converted into something else, I wouldn't have the first idea to know what to do, you know. So the idea is to teach these principles of harmony and high spirituality and let people broaden their approach to spiritual life. And then, so there is this meditation and study and service activities there. I have been in a school, I have taught school children, been an administrator, as Professor Clooney said. Devotional activities, prayer, there is singing. I'm a very poor singer. So but and ritualistic puja. You will find all kinds of ritualistic pujas going on in Belur Math. And you will find ashrams like, there's an ashram in the Himalayas place, in a place called Mayavati, with absolutely no ritual at all. You're not even allowed to bow down in front of a picture. So all of this tremendous variety of approaches to spiritual life you find in this order. It's again something that's very attractive to me. I could go on, but we will talk about it in the Q&A. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Three of you are representing different orders of Hindu philosophy and Hinduism. And one of the goal is achieving harmony and inner peace, and ultimately moksha or realization. Do you feel all the years you've spent till now, are you leading towards that path? I'm not going to ask you, have you seen God, but do you feel, are you in the right path, and what all the audience can get from that?
Straight answer, yes. Not a day goes by without my feeling that, yes, the path that I've chosen, I don't mean just particularly my particular order or philosophy, but the general spiritual path, there is something really deep and very worthwhile. I would say the most worthwhile thing in all of human life. And it's not just for monastics. Monastics are specialists, but it's for everybody. Everybody should be spiritual in whatever way they understand it. And it's a journey. Over the years, this much I can say, that my understanding of what spirituality is, my understanding of what Advaita is, what the purpose of all of it is, this has just deepened over, and my appreciation for other paths has also deepened. Definitely.
I mean, having all three of you here is such a remarkable and wonderful opportunity for all of us, and also I think for Harvard, for the Divinity School. And it's been really nice to hear that it's also been, at least so far, meaningful for all of you. I'm curious as to, you shared with us something about your journey to becoming monastics. I'm wondering what you'll share when you go back about this interlude at Harvard and being students.
One of my brother monks said, not to me, to somebody else, oh, I know what's going to happen. He's going to go to Harvard, and next year he's going to come back with loads of Harvard anecdotes. So, little stories which he'll talk about in the course of his talks. So that's already happening. I gave a talk in San Jose just last week, and I was talking about studying Tibetan Buddhism, the emptiness people, for 3 hours from noon to 3 p.m. with Professor Garfield, and then Atman and Brahman and God and all the Upanishads with Professor Clooney from 3 p.m. to nearly 6 p.m. So imagine the whiplash. So
I'm glad you did the Buddhism first and then...
yes. So I'll have loads to share, not only with people at large, but also with our organization, who will expect a feedback from me at the end of my experience in Harvard. It's going to be very positive feedback.
In a lot of religions, there's the concept that religion protects you from what are called like marginal experiences. So if there's real traumas that you go through in your life, religion is able to sort of stabilize you and help you like continue living the good life. So do you feel like there are such experiences that you like faced in your lives that have really led you down the monastic path, or do you feel like you would have remained on the monastic path had you not gone through like the experiences that you have?
This is an interesting question. I've actually taught monastic novices for about 8 years, so hundreds of young men who want to become monks. And I've asked them sometimes questions about what led them to become a monk. And the answers I get neatly fall into two categories. One is those who always wanted this life. A small group, but they always felt they didn't know much about monasticism maybe, but a spiritual life, and they couldn't think of anything else. And there is such a group. The second group is those who were in school and college just like everybody else, and then suddenly made a decision. And that sudden decision could have come from many reasons. It could be a sudden shock, a death, a loss, a kind of a trauma, or it could be just something positive, having read something, met somebody, something like that. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, whatever brings you to spiritual life, not just monastic life, spiritual life. It's like taking a bath in the holy river Ganga. You may, get ready and put on your swimming clothes and go into the river, or somebody may push you in, or you may slip and fall into it. The result is you get wet. So that's the way I look at it. And after some time, it really doesn't matter. Whatever happened in the past which pushed you into this life, which inspired you or made you take up this life as a refuge, you will bless that, good or bad. Whatever it happened, it brought you to this life. This life becomes important.
What are the greatest obstacles that you face or have to keep tabs on in your path to devotion?
The greatest obstacles. Then you can go in any order you want.
Yeah, it's not always plain sailing, but most of the real obstacles are internal, not external. It's a wonderful environment. If one wants spiritual life and wants monastic life, what better environment can there be than a monastery? Whichever order, tradition you have. One advice I used to give to young novices who are just going to become monks was that, or those who want to become monks, so people come to me and ask, so I'm joining the order, I'm going to this ashram, I'm going to start my monastic life. I say first, burn your bridges. No going back. Once you have made the decision. Before you have made the decision, generally the senior monks will say, don't become a monk. They want to see whether you are pushing hard. One of my friends who's a doctor who became a monk, he said the first day I went to the monastery, the senior monk in the there in the monastery spent half an hour convincing me why I should not be a monk, and then asked me, what do you want to do now? I said, I want to be a monk. He said, good. Then I say that you burn your bridges. Absolutely no looking back now. Vivekananda said, you have spent many lives doing many things. Give one life to God and see. And he said, even if it's going to be wasted, give one life to God. And then he says, with his characteristic rhetoric, it will not be wasted. So, yes. There are no problems outside, really. Most of them are inside. And we go in with expectations that this is the way it will be, the ashram will be like this, the people will be like that, then you are in for trouble. I remember when I first entered the order, a powerful bit of advice. One or two things which have really helped me, all internal. One is the head of the monastery where I joined. The first day as a novice, 25 years ago, he said, look, you have come here looking at Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, Ma Sharada. They are your ideal, not us. You keep your eyes on them throughout your life. One. The next was, when I went in to do my first bit of work for the ashram, there was a school teaching kids, and I was introduced by the senior monk there as this newcomer, who was a smart young man, qualified, an MBA and all that sort of thing. And one of the teachers, who was a lay teacher, he said, oh, we are lucky to have him. And then the monk said something which I have carried till today. He said sharply in front of everybody, no, he is lucky to be here. So these are some things which help you to power through the problems in monastic life. Yeah.
You're all marinated in the Upanishads, as you say. How do you find it in your own practice, being here or being anywhere in day-to-day life, carrying that Brahmanubhava into daily feeling of unity consciousness? How is that doable, possible, given that you can get tangled up in the world?
That's a really good question. I remember reading a Swami who's not of our order, a traditional monk in the Himalayas, in Hindi. He says, वेदांत प्रतीति को मिटाने के लिए नहीं है, वेदांत आपको व्यवहार में निर्बाध बनाता है. So Vedanta is not for wiping out the experience of the world, not for sitting with eyes closed in a mountain cave and not experiencing the world. No, it makes you, nirbad is a very difficult word to translate into English. Limitless, fearless, no resistance, in the midst of all kinds of experiences. Now let me put that in practical terms, what it has meant for me. I can say this much, that I have lived in a monastery on the bank of the Ganga. I have lived teaching students in dorms and hostels. I have lived on mountain tops, actually not literally in a cave, but in a hut, begging for my food, actually sleeping under a tree on the Himalayan mountain sides. And I've lived in Hollywood, Manhattan, and Harvard. Though I was last week in Silicon Valley and they took me down a notch. One of them said, all of that is nothing compared to Silicon Valley. So, but what I can say is, you get a feeling of evenness in everything. So nothing is terrible or terribly bad. Nothing is all that fantastic either. You enjoy every situation, you see the good in it, and the bad and the difficult, you tend to overcome it. There is an internal, if you remain centered in something much deeper than the individual. Yeah, that's a great, great benefit.